Hi, this is Roopak and you're listening to Flux Navigators. I'm a producer and media entrepreneur and founder of Mumbai LA production company Bang Bang. I'm also a diplobrat, or the kid of a diplomat, and that's one of the main reasons I've had the unique opportunity to live in 13 cities in 10 countries on 6 continents. It's a major part of my identity, you could say. So I've grown up with the deep-seated belief that the world is a very small place, and I have the strong desire to make everyone else internalize that too. It's also the reason I'm somewhat of a chameleon when it comes to my English. My accent unconsciously switches depending on whom I'm talking to. Sometimes that freaks people out, but that's how it's always been since I was a little kid. But enough about me, let's move on to the show. Since that fateful day at CES 2016 when Netflix announced it was going live in 130 new countries in one shot, we've been living in a new content paradigm, one where audiences around the world are watching content created around the world, en masse. It's what I like to call the decentralization of Hollywood. Join me on Flux Navigators as I shoot the shit with creators, writers, showrunners, producers, directors, investors, media executives, and other key voices shaping this new global reality. Welcome to Flux Navigators. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Flux Navigators. I have here with me Shruti Ganguly, founder of New York City production company Honto 88. She is a true multi-hyphenate, a producer, director, writer, super cool chick, and all-around awesome person, and very, very importantly, a good friend. Let me tell you two things about her. One is that she has produced for and worked with a whole bunch of Hollywood A-listers. And the other interesting thing I can tell you is that she served on a White House Entertainment Committee under President Obama. And let me tell you a third thing, which is that we are working together on a project, and hopefully we will work together on others too. But I am not going to tell you more stuff that can be Googled about Shruti, because you can Google that stuff about Shruti. I will tell you and we'll talk about stuff that can't be Googled. So Shruti, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Roopak. And can you do my intros every time? Anywhere I
go? Absolutely. I would love that gig. So we will start by getting into a question that I would like to say, this is a question I ask everyone, but since you're pretty much my first podcast guest, I can't say that, but maybe I'll do that from now on. What are you obsessing over right now?
What am I obsessing over right now? I mean, we're in these really incredible times. And as of, just yesterday, Oslo, where I'm currently based because my husband's from here and working here, has gone into another lockdown again. And as somebody who, like you, has lived in different countries and traveled, the way that I'm getting to travel, the way that we're getting to travel is by what we eat and what we watch and what we listen to. And so my latest obsessions when it comes to food is we've been making a lot of tacos, and we make Mexican tacos every week. And it's been a way that we get to, unfortunately, I must say that there's not so many great Mexican food options in Norway. So this is the way that we are getting to feel connected to Mexico through its food. That's one of my current obsessions. When it comes to what we're watching, we've just started Peaky Blinders, which has been really fun to dive into. And I mean, for me, the best show I saw on television last year, and I think even till now, is I May Destroy You. So I am just obsessed with Michaela Coel. And it was incredibly disappointing when she essentially got no recognition from the Hollywood foreign press with no Golden Globe nominations. And that is a real disservice to this industry that we're in. And I think more creators like her, more stories like the ones that she's championing, and so many others need to get told. So I'm obsessed with her and I May Destroy You. And then in terms of music, I feel like I've always been obsessed with Motown. And I am developing a series around the Harlem Renaissance with MGM and Killer Films. And so just really at this time to uphold and celebrate incredible Black creators and voices feels more important than ever before. It should always have been important, but as we're coming off Black History Month, which was February, and now we started Women's History Month, I'm even more particularly into, you know, women creators and women of color and Black female creators in general, and how to, use my company and our platform to support those voices and stories.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Very long answer to your question. I have a lot of obsessions.
I know you do. Some of them are pretty funny too. We can talk about that. But it's funny you mentioned, because I was listening when I was working out this morning. I was listening to Brian Koppelman's podcast, The Moment, and he was talking to Ron Howard, and Ron Howard was talking about in the context of answering a question, which I think he answered in almost as long a fashion as you did this one. But he was talking about how people who are in a position of power, whether in political leadership or in entertainment specifically, should take responsibility and should be ashamed of the fact that they didn't use that power to change things earlier. And he says, and I throw myself right in there, and I am totally guilty. And so, what you said just resonated completely. And, coming to Michaela Cole, so my wife Tara and I just watched that show a couple of weeks ago, and I have not seen a more unique show, I think. I mean, everything about it, every minute. First of all, it grabbed me within the first 30 seconds. Secondly, I mean, there were at least 20 things that happened in that show. I was like, I have never seen anything like this before. So I just love the originality and the authenticity with which that show was done. So yeah, I agree with you. Totally disappointing that it didn't get recognized. But I'm sure we're going to see and hear a lot more from her. And you mentioned Oslo is back in lockdown. I had no idea. And I'm sorry to hear that, although I'm sure it's for the better. But what that does mean is that you and your study buddy or your work buddy, Caspian, who's also your son, and is asleep right now. And he's a four-legged son for our listeners over here. So you don't get to go out. So where I'm talking to you right now is your home office and your home and your office. So you covered a whole bunch of things over there, and I think that one of the things that came out is something that I wanted to talk to you about, because your company Honto 88, which you founded how long ago now?
Honto is just over 3 years old.
Just over 3 years old, and it says so on the site, but in general, I think you're all about bringing positive change to anything and everything around you, both in terms of race, gender, identity, which is also why a project that you and I are collaborating on, or Bang Bang and Honto 88 are collaborating on, which is Brown History. Shruti, you talked about earlier about you covered this in what you were saying, and the fact is that ever since I've known you, and your company Honto 88 was founded on that premise of wanting to bring about change in everything that you're doing as well, especially representation of race, gender, identity, and just sort of making sure voices that aren't getting heard enough are being heard. And it's very clear. And I don't know, what I wanted to ask you was, is this something that you were always doing, or is this something that's sort of more recent over the past 3 or 4 years as you matured in this space?
I mean, I think that this has always been something I grew up with, in the sense of my mom was always really focused on creating opportunities and spaces for people who needed support. She's done work with migrant workers. She started a Center for Special Education. She focused on also creating a safe space for women who had dealt with domestic and other types of abuses. And so that was very much a part of the fabric of my childhood. And in a way, now creating one's own space as a filmmaker, there is a very clear and obvious synergy that happens because so much of what we make as filmmakers is tapping into, ideas and stories from our own childhood and our upbringing. And so in a way, obviously when I was starting out in, the entertainment and media industry, you're just taking any opportunity you can get. So you can create, you can, build a resume, you can make things, you can grow, you can learn. And so you kind of take opportunities that are presenting itself. And at first, they may not necessarily be so focused on the social justice conversation, but part of the foundations for my company when I started it a few years ago was to definitely elevate these types of stories. And at the same time, it's not like we are only focusing on making dramas or documentaries. I mean, I sold a film to Sony last year, which is a horror, psychological horror film that also digs into the complexity of women's friendship. So in a way, one can still say that that discusses, you know, race and gender, but it
Right.
has a different lens through which it's being made. And then comedy is a wonderful way of communicating powerful ideas as well. So I would say that even when we want to make these conversations, we really want to explore various genres in which we can make them.
Right, right, absolutely. And to your point, even we were talking about Michaela Cole earlier. I mean, what genre is "I May Destroy You"? I think it defies everything, which is kind of cool. But you're right. I think comedy, especially, and we're seeing more and more instances of that. I mean, look at Atlanta. What is Atlanta? Again, and I love the fact that these are all genre bending, genre defying, genre breaking shows, and there's more and more of that. And I think that you know um, you always have place for prestige drama, which is of a specific sort of kind of I don't want to use the word genre again, but I guess if, of a specific genre. But I think the more we break into defying stereotypes, it's not just about racial representation or gender representation. It's also about genres in general, and that's part of the freshness of what we're seeing. And which actually brings up a question in my mind, because I want to talk a little bit and focus a little bit on the I guess I would call it the multi hyphenateness of your life, because you're a director and writer. You went to NYU Film School, but you also are a producer. And when you went to film school, you also went to business school. So tell us a little bit about that, because I know, I mean, it's how do you compartmentalize that, or do you even compartmentalize that, or do you have like, okay, Monday I'm going to do this, Sunday I'm going to do that, Tuesdays I'm going to do this. So tell us about that.
I mean, it's quite funny because when I first even came to college in the States as an undergrad, I studied economics and painting. And then a decade later or so, I was going to NYU for grad school and getting an MFA and an MBA. And so, in a way, I think that what has been true and stayed consistently, which one can only kind of summarize when you have had some space from it. Otherwise, you sound like a disaster to everyone, including yourself, when you are existing between these poles. And what I really, there's clear, there are the stories that I really want to make myself and develop and, write and direct. And that being said, I love the aspect of supporting other filmmakers and creating the space to do that, which I do as a producer. Ironically, I started a production company 3 years ago to focus on writing and directing because I wasn't getting those chances. And I had to reframe my own narrative in a way because right out of grad school, I ended up producing a lot. That's where a lot of opportunities were presenting themselves, and I was taking them. I had the chance to work with incredible actors and make indie films that then went to Venice and Sundance and Berlin, and also while being an executive in media, which was always important to me to you know, be a part of a pulse. And it was really interesting because I had this moment of reflection where I was like, wow, I also studied screenwriting and directing, and I realized that I'm not carving out the space to do that. And the only way I'm going to do that is to, start telling people that this is what I want to do, hire me for that. But at the same time, that wasn't happening. A lot of people were also putting me in a box. You're a producer, you're a great producer. And I was getting a lot of opportunities to keep going down that path. But then that's why I had to suddenly take a pause and say, okay, I'm starting a company that represents me. And I'm going to start, directing things on a low budget because I'm not getting those chances and I have to prove myself. And it's so, interesting that and this is something I hear a lot from a lot of women creators, from a lot of women of color, especially, about this need to feel like you're always proving yourself. But that being said, last night when my dear friend from NYU grad film, Chloe Zhao, won, the Golden Globe for Best Director and Best Film for Nomadland, I mean, that is such an achievement. And she has really,
Absolutely.
broken through and changes that conversation for so many people. I mean, at the same time, it's also incredibly staggering that there was a report that just came out by Free the Work, which is an organization that really celebrates women and non-binary filmmakers. And it was staggering to show that when it came to TV directing, that Asian women, and you can imagine Asian women refer to South Asian, East Asian, Middle Eastern.
Right.
Women were the lowest percentage of hires in television, and out of all the other minority groups. And that being said, here's Chloe winning a Golden Globe. So we're also seeing how there's so much systematic change that needs to happen. And I think for me also, like, having a production company and creating a platform for other voices can actually lead to some of that systematic change because we have the setup and the understanding and infrastructure. And then at the same time, I will always keep writing and directing.
Yeah, no, but absolutely. I can totally testify to the fact that you walk the talk as far as that goes, even though, and to our listeners, Shruti and I have known each other since we were much younger because our parents are friends, but we only started kind of talking about work about a little over a year ago. And in that time, I have seen this in everything, and not just in the way that they work, but even the people who are on her team. And it's nice because we, as a company, because we're doing Brown History together, we collaborate, and sometimes, there's like 7 or 8 of us on a call, her team, my team, and it feels very cohesive in that respect. So I like that. But, one of the things you were talking about, and it reminds me, I couldn't help but think, and I wanted to talk about this anyways, and but it's a great segue to talk about the story behind 73 Questions. And for those of you who don't know, 73 Questions is an awesome Condé Nast, or a Vogue property, actually. It's a Vogue property originally, right? Mm-hmm. And it's something that was a format that was created in New York at Vogue in the US. And then they actually, had it in other Vogues around the world. And the original one had Sarah Jessica Parker, and Shruti will tell us more about that. So tell us about what it is and your experience working on that.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, I've kind of also, worked in 2 different worlds, not just in film, but also in media as an executive. And I had been at MTV, and I was charged with rethinking MTV Desi for the 3rd time and commissioning incredible South Asian creators and voices to,
what year was this?
Come up with ideas. And that was in 2012 to 2013. Mm-hmm. And then there was the opportunity to go to Condé Nast to help rethink the content for Vogue, American Vogue. And I started there in January 2014. And the first thing I produced was 73 Questions with Sarah Jessica Parker. And there's a lot that I can talk about when it comes to making that episode, but also its success. And in many ways, some of the reasons why I decided to resign from Condé Nast 9 months later. So there was a video that needed to be made with Sarah Jessica Parker because she was going to be in the book, as one would say, in the magazine for an upcoming issue. She had a shoe line that was coming out. And so director, Joe Sabia, was tasked with coming up with an idea. And he came up with 100 questions in 5 minutes, which was a pretty standard digital idea that, we had seen, in the YouTube space before. And I'll never forget sitting with Sarah Jessica and Joe and Vince, our cinematographer, and my counterpart at Vogue, Lizzie Harris. And Sarah Jessica immediately killed the idea. She was like, I can't do 100 questions in 5 minutes. It's not my brand. And I would have known the questions in advance, and I need to have some time to think about it. And oftentimes what I've seen in this space of YouTube creators is, the overconfident director who's more obsessed with their own idea than knowing how to really listen to talent. And because I had also come from making movies with different actors, and Sarah Jessica and I knew actors in common, there was a little bit of ease also in terms of how to navigate her feedback, before she just shot the entire thing down.
Right.
And anyway, we then went away and came up, Joe started to work on the questions, and he then said, I've ended up with 69 questions. And I joked and I said, well, this isn't Playboy. We can't have 69 questions. Let's figure this out. And he said, what do you think of 73? And I Googled 73, and the only thing on the internet that I found at that time was a sonnet by Shakespeare. And I was like, it's a good prime number, and let's own it. The irony is that everyone, I love when people are like, I love 74 questions. 72 questions is great. And
but like, it is, okay. It's such a weird number because, it's a pretty high prime number, I have to say,
Yeah, and the fun thing is that it's such a random number that you can kind of own it a little bit. And
great
so,
for SEO.
We did the shoot with Sarah Jessica in a single shot, and we had rehearsed it many times. And when we finally sat down and looked at the edit for the 73 questions and answers, she had about 50 ums or so. And so obviously using sound design, we extracted that. We added music in the rooms. And the thing that I was dealing with internally at Condé Nast Entertainment, which was the division I worked in, was, my boss and my boss's boss said, we can't put this video out. It's, around 6 minutes. It's way too long. Anna doesn't like anything over 3 minutes. And I argued with them and I said, a video needs to be as long as it should be. And it should just be engaging. And when it needs to be finished, it'll finish. But, the original creative is a single shot. So editing down the video actually does a disservice to the creative, and it's not going to make very much sense. And I remember just going to my desk and cutting it down and showing it to them. And I was like, look, it's bad. It doesn't work. The camera is in constant flow, and it, it's not really going anywhere. And I could see, sorry, it was around 6 minutes.
Right.
It's actually, 73 questions. It's not a short video series. It's quite long, but there's a constant state of engagement because of the various elements of surprise that get added to it. And, I knew that because my bosses weren't listening to me, that I had to then write to Joe, the director, and say, look, I need you to weigh in because I'm not getting anywhere. And then he sent a very impassioned email, which got heard more than what I was saying. And so when, obviously when you added the color correction and the sound design, it felt really cohesive, and there was never a beat that felt long. And we took out a lot of the ums. Right. Now, the thing that was also really crucial to the success of 73 questions, which a lot of people don't know, is you don't just make a video and expect it to come out without any type of strategy. And I sat down with the marketing department and communications teams to really map out the best way for this to come out. I was like, 73 questions means 73 ways of promoting it, because every answer she says could apply to, whether it's her favorite restaurant or her favorite song. Like, let those people know who's, work gets affected by her answers. So we can really have like this organic traction. But the thing that really did it is that, years ago, I had made a video for a band called The Pains of Being Pure at Heart when I was at Nylon magazine. And, the video producer there. And one of the people in the band is a woman called Peggy Wang, who had been the second hire at BuzzFeed. And I had known Peggy for years. And we had made this video doing Jello shots in her apartment in the Lower East Side, and we stayed friends. And I then, hit her up and I said, Peggy, listen, I got this video of Sarah Jessica Parker in her apartment, talking frankly in a way that we haven't seen before. And is this something that, BuzzFeed could be interested in putting out at the same time? And, at that moment, BuzzFeed was one of the most trafficked sites in the world. And that was not the case for Vogue. I knew that we had spent a lot of time making this really great video, and I didn't believe that people would come to Vogue's website to watch it at all.
Right.
And that actually really, the day that the video came out, BuzzFeed put it out with memes in advance, linking it back to Vogue's video. And suddenly, within the next day, it became the company's highest performing video.
Wow.
And that is what sparked the series. That doesn't end, and I can't watch them.
Okay, guys, looks like we're running out of time for this episode. You're going to have to tune in to the next episode of Flux Navigators to catch the rest of my conversation with Shruti, where she gives us the inside on what not to do in this industry. Till later.